Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Oswego Alumni Podcast. The views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Oswego Alumni Association, SUNY Oswego, or any of its officials. Without further ado, here is your host, Dee Perkins.
Welcome to the Oswego Podcast. My name is Dee Perkins, filling in for the summer because the students are on break. And I'm so happy to have Marcus LaRobardiere. Did I get it?
You got it.
I don't think so. I think I kind of mangled it again. But Marcus, go ahead, say it.
LaRobardiere.
Oh, so beautiful when you say it. So terrible when I say it. Marcus is the class of 2011, and he is doing PR in Boston. And we're going to get his take on what it takes to be a successful PR person, and also how his time in Oswego was and how it influenced what he did in his life and how it affects his life currently. So thanks for coming on the podcast. And it's the first time we're doing a video podcast. So it's a vlog. That's it. Yeah. So class of 2011, you're only out there for 10 years. And let's get started and talk about what made you choose Oswego as the place you wanted to go to college.
So there were a couple different factors. I had wanted to get into the broadcasting. That was what I originally wanted to do coming out of high school. And so, the two broadcast schools in Central New York where I grew up, Oswego and Syracuse. And I also had a dream to play college sports, play soccer. And I had an opportunity to do that at Oswego. And so it was really easy for me to make the decision because I had the major that I wanted to study, and I had a chance to play sports, and it wasn't too far away. And the water, you're right on Lake Ontario. Like, how does it get any better than that? It doesn't. So it was pretty easy.
I remember when I was looking at colleges and I saw the water, it sealed the deal for me. But the first dorm that I was in was Moreland, and it looked over the electric plant. It wasn't exactly what I had in mind.
Right.
Where did you start? What was your first dorm?
Seneca.
Seneca.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I was in 8th floor Seneca. Great view from there.
Nice.
Yeah. So when you got to college, the funny thing about the college experience is you're thrown into a room with someone you've never met before. Tell me about your roommate experience. Was it somebody who had similar interests, or did you kind of have to learn a whole new thing?
So I had actually, a friend that I had in growing up, I had known him my whole life, was actually a sophomore. And so I had sort of pleaded to room with him, which didn't take away from the experience whatsoever, because he had baked in a friend group that lived in Seneca, and it was familiar. I had gotten to school middle of August because you have tryouts and training camp for soccer. So going into it, I was excited about that, and having someone familiar to live with was an okay thing, and I felt good about that. And it didn't take away from the experience whatsoever, because you go through the freshman orientation and you get to meet all these people. And at the time, Facebook was really prominent, and starting to really pick up. And so I remember, like, everybody going in for the class of 2011, there was like a Facebook group where we were all talking and asking where people lived and stuff. So I didn't feel like that took away whatsoever from my college experience, because I had all these classes and all these opportunities to meet people and really just throw myself into every opportunity to get immersed into school and meet new people, and had doors open through my major and different classes, as well as soccer. And I kind of skipped that awkward part of having to learn, who a roommate is.
So it sounds like you had kind of two tracks that colored your college experiences: the broadcasting and soccer. So let's start with soccer.
Sure.
How long were you on the team? Did you all 4 years? Were you a star player? Tell me a little bit about that.
I was far from a star player, but I played all 4 years. And so I played goalkeeper, and it was a blast. I mean, I really wouldn't trade that for anything. And I know that there's a lot of different social paths and different things that people can have in college, whether you go into Greek life or you're joining clubs that are on campus and things. But for me, it was soccer, and I really was so appreciative and thankful for that because, I had to work to get a spot on the team and stay on the team. And, it's kind of a cliche. Everyone says, what do you miss about, playing soccer or playing college as, in college as an athlete? And it's like the locker room and training and practices and all that stuff, all that bonding time that you have with your teammates. And so that really was such a blast. And, I mean, really some of my best friends, still to this day, were born and from playing on that team.
So that was going to be my follow-up question. Are they still guys that you talk to? Do you have a text chain going on?
Oh yeah.
Tell me.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. So a funny story, actually. So one of the guys who was a year older than I was, who played soccer, he played goalkeeper. We played the same position. He was in the communications department. He was studying PR, and that had originally came in as a broadcast major. And, talking with Nick LaRobardiere, he was the class of 2010. He was studying PR, and we had a couple classes overlap. And then I had shifted my major to communications and PR and dropped out of broadcasting, or just transitioned, I guess, and played with him. He graduated and moved to Boston and had an internship, and then eventually was able to get a full-time job, and sort of pulled me to Boston. And then I ended up living with him for a few years, until we had serious relationships, and then moved in with our girlfriends. And you kind of grow up, and now we're both married to said girlfriends. And I'm going to see him this weekend, and so we live 20 minutes away from each other here in Boston, which isn't unique. I know that happens quite a bit, but yeah, just bizarre that we had worked together, played soccer together, went to Oswego together, lived in a small apartment in Somerville, just outside of Boston together. And you can't make that stuff up.
No, there's a lot of that in Oswego. I think that's what makes our college so special. In my situation, the first 5 radio jobs I got from somebody I met in Oswego, and he just kept, saying, "Oh, Dee would be great for this. Dee would be great for that." And I'm eternally thankful to him and to the school, because I talk to other people about their college experience, and I think it's very special that Oswego just forms these tight knit groups. And, once you're in, those people, they last a lifetime. You're 2011. I'm 1985. Yeah. And I still have a text group. I have a text group of my 1985ers. So, it is an amazing thing. I don't know. Maybe it's the snow. I don't know what the special sauce is, but there is definitely special sauce.
Yeah. I think if you can go through one of those lake effect snowstorms and deal with the wind coming off of the lake together, you've pretty much imprinted on a bond amongst your friends that, you've gotten through this, you can get through pretty much anything.
So you talked about coming in as wanting to be a broadcaster, and then you switched to communications. What was behind that choice?
I saw the movie Thank You for Smoking, and thought that it was
Aaron
cool.
Eckhart, right? Aaron Eckhart is in that? Yes. Okay.
And so, the broadcast school was awesome, but I'm thinking, okay, like, it's for what I wanted to do, being on camera, that's really hard, and you really have to grind. And, I was like, my heart's just not in it. I think that there's something else that I want to do. And I became more interested in marketing and communications, and, PR was I had a few friends that were in the program. I had done some research and talked with them, and, felt that it was a good fit. And so it was pretty easy. I had a lot of credits already built up. So making that transition and majoring in communications and PR was relatively smooth, and I wasn't going to lose time as far as graduating on time. And so everything made sense, and it was a really easy transition. And I think about some of the classes, like interpersonal communication, persuasion, conflict, all of those things still, I mean, to this day, you're using some of those principles and things that I learned and thought of, and, it had studied while we were, at school and in class. And so, that's served me well all the way through. Even till this day. So.
Was there a particular professor that guided you, or you feel like every time you talk about the success that you've had, you kind of want to tip your hat to that person?
There are a couple. I would struggle to remember the names. I do know one.
No,
professor
come on,
in
you're only
particular.
10 years out.
I do know one professor in particular that I had a blast with, John Smith. He was.
You could do his laugh.
Yeah, Oh.
He knows we're doing
Oh
it.
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, he was fantastic. I loved his classes. And Steve as well. I'm trying to think of, I can't remember his last. I'm terrible with names. I remember faces. But he now is a professor at Northeastern here in Boston. We haven't had a chance to connect and meet up, but he had a really fun class around interpersonal communications. And I remember we watched Harry Met Sally and stuff like that in class. So, I mean, cumulatively, it was all impactful and a lot of fun. And really appreciate it, and it helped me, set me up really to get a job full time right out of school. And so I graduated in May, and then by August I was living in Boston and working at a PR agency. And so, I had an internship in Syracuse. I was working at the science and the Syracuse Academy of Science. And doing community relations and things there for my spring semester, senior year. And that was a lot of fun. But to speak of, that was the professional experience I had. And so I really credit the curriculum, the classes, the projects, and everything leading up to helping to build a resume, which, compared to resumes I see when I'm, hiring people today, they're a little more filled out. Mine was pretty light. And so, I credit the school, the institution, and all the classes and all the curriculum and everything that I'd had that really did set me up to land a full-time job out of school. And at that time, on the heels of the housing and economic crisis, it really was a little bit scary, not sure what the job market was going to be. And I think I was lucky, but also was prepared and had a really, really good education and had a really good, just prep to be able to make the transition to the professional life.
I like to set our folks in a moment in time. And I think one of the things that all of us can relate to is music. And I know when I graduated and I was going through those first hard times, I had a song that was my theme song. So to place you in the timeline of Oswego, what would you say when you graduated and going through those hard times? What was your song that got you through?
There isn't one in particular that I can think of. I know that Zach Brown Band was pretty popular. So yeah, I know we listened to a lot of him and Mumford & Sons. They had their first album, my senior year that it came out. And I listened to that probably on repeat with all of my roommates, like nonstop. We loved that album. So I would say probably Mumford & Sons. Yeah.
And Zach Brown, Toes in the Sand.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that song. I love that song. And Mumford & Sons, I Will Wait. I mean, that's a great jam song.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Mumford & Sons, I Will Wait. I will wait. I will wait for you.
That was the one. That was the one.
Yeah. I'm waiting for somebody to stump me, so far I'm good. I'm good in 10 years ago music. So you leave Oswego and, this is the part that the younger students who are listening or watching, are going to want to be interested in. how do you feel your experience in college got you that first step of breaking into the Boston market? I think you talked about it already, that it was a fellow soccer player that helped you get there, but give me more detail. How did that actually happen?
So, I mean, one of the things that I would say, and I picked this up probably my junior year, was really started to work and get to know my professors and my advisors. And, you know, it's very easy to sit in the class and go through the motions. And, you know, even today, and we could talk about this a little bit, but I'm an adjunct professor at LaSalle University, teaching about digital commerce and retail for the School of Fashion here. And, you know, and some of my students, I've found, you know, they hesitant to reach out or take advantage of office hours. And, you know, there were times when I was just, I really need to know this. And I realized that it's a short amount of time, 4 years, to be at a school. And I, you know, had went through freshman year, just enjoying everything. It was so new. Sophomore year, I'm like, okay, I got this. This is really fun. And then I'm like, oh no, I have 2 years to go and I want to graduate on time. I do not want to, you know, stay any longer than I have to, not because I didn't love Oswego, but because I wanted to graduate on time and I wanted to see what that next chapter was. And so I just took advantage of our office hours, and spoke with professors, got to know them, asked them about, grabbed a cup of coffee and asked, you know, what do I need to do to, you know, ensure that I have a job coming out of school, and just asking advice from alumni. And that certainly helps put some things into perspective. You know, I was getting a lot of tips about get an internship. If you can get one, go for it. And that was how I had spent the spring semester, last half of my senior year, doing community relations for the Academy of Science in Syracuse, and that helped, you know, set me up. And then working with professors to create a portfolio and pull together writing samples, all of which, you know, was prepared and ready to go. I had like a little binder or a folder that I brought to the interview and shared with folks. And so, yeah, I mean, that all helped. I took a lot of interviews. I mean, this is one thing I tell students or anybody that is younger that's looking for jobs, like, interview for jobs even if you don't want them, because probably by the time I had an interview for a position and a job that I really wanted, I had probably done like 20 job interviews at that point, for jobs that I didn't want or just practice. I just took them and took them because who knows? I mean, if you get an offer letter, you know, then okay, or you get an offer and then you take it, that's fine. But I also just understood that practice makes perfect. And so as many interviews as I could take, I took. And yeah, just leaning into the classes that I felt I wanted to take, but would also set me up for the career that I wanted. And so it was a blend of everything, you know.
Did your experience, that's an amazing thing that you were constantly setting yourself up to be rejected, you know?
Yeah.
And so I started to think, did your experience as a soccer player kind of prepare you for those rejections? Some people, you know, and I love you talked about you didn't want to be on camera. I also think there's a piece of that there's so much rejection when you're going out for on-screen talent. So did the experience of being a soccer player, knowing that some games you win and some games you lose, did that prepare you for, you know, 20 interviews and 20, you know, rejections until the 21st was an okay?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And the fact that I, you know, wasn't the most talented player on the team and had to work and stay on the team and, you know, make up for areas where maybe you weren't as talented or as skilled. So you had to be fit. And so, yeah, I mean, I had to work at it. It didn't come that naturally, you know? And so, and so for some players that's easy, right? But I had to be disciplined and work at it and practice and get better every single day. And so just that constant grind, and there's lessons in that, less about winning and losing a game, but, you know, to make the team, to stay on it, to be good, to get better at different things every single day. All of that stuff really did. There were lessons to be learned from that. And I took advantage of them and think about those quite often, actually.
Did the hurt of the nose hurt less?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I had, there were some jobs in rejections that did hurt a little bit, but I also had a lot of confidence, and I knew that eventually something was going to work out, and it was going to work out the way that it was supposed to. And yeah, I remember getting the call in August. So I had went to Boston to visit my buddy and interview at the firm that he was at, the agency, and he told me, and they'd said this is purely informational. So I didn't feel much pressure. I didn't even wear a tie. I just had a suit on and a jacket and a shirt, and that was it. And he's like, "You're crazy." I'm like, "It's informative. Like, it's a informal interview. What do I care? They're telling me right out from the start, there's no job to be had. So like, okay, so kind of going into that one, and that was the more pressure because I did want that job. But my mentality is, they said, "Oh, this is informational. There's no position yet, but we just want to get to know you. And if one pops up, we'll hire you." So I was like, "Oh, I just need to charm and win them over. That's it." Right. And, and so I wasn't expecting to get the offer. And when I did, I was so excited. And so, yeah, I mean, in that moment, hearing all the other no's or not getting the calls back, because that's actually the worst part. You can handle a no because that, there's no shot at getting the job. But when you don't hear anything, that's really terrible. So
I think that's common. Right? Oh, yeah. That's common today, that it's just employer ghosting. That's what they call it.
Well, and now being on the other side of it, so I'm the senior director of marketing for a startup company, and we hired a few positions recently. And being on the other side of the hiring process, the ghosting goes both ways. I've had a number of candidates try and sign up, send the Zoom invite, like trying to get the interview set up, and sitting around for 10 minutes, and you're like, "I don't think this person's coming."
Oh my God.
And I'm like,
that's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I understand what the last 18 months of our entire world was like. And, and there was a time like in November of 2020 where like we were hiring for a position, and I must have had like 150 applicants, and people were just pushing and trying to get a job as much as possible. And then, we're hiring in May, and everybody's like, "I don't know if this one's for me." And so there's an entire shift. And I had never been ghosted as the hiring manager for an interview until recently. And even our head of HR was like, "That's a little insane. That doesn't happen too often. It's usually on the other foot."
So you talked about when you graduated, it was a tough time. It was the economy crash during the Obama years.
Yeah, it was like the housing crisis. And so there was a dip, and it was, I just remember, speaking with, my dad and some others, and just a little bit of uncertainty. And I wasn't sure how it was going to affect the job market and what I was going to have to be faced with, or any of my peers. Right. And I didn't have anything lined up. And so, it was a little bit nerve wracking. Gas was super expensive. I remember I was telling this story to somebody yesterday. We were talking about bad interviews. And I remember driving to Syracuse for an interview at this place. And this is one of the examples. I didn't want to work there, but I was like, well, if worse comes to worst and I have no options, if I get an offer, at least I have this in my back pocket. And I remember driving there, and I pulled up to the place, and I just could tell, I'm like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to work here. But I'm going to go through with the interview. I'm not going to ghost the hiring manager like some other people do today. So I went in, and the guy, he was kind of a tough dude. And he was like, it was for a sales position, and he was trying to see how I handle objection. And he said, "What if I told you today that there's no job for you?" And I was really irritated because that was like his first question. And I'm like, well, I would walk out because gas is like almost $4 a gallon. I'm a college student with no job, and I just wasted an hour driving to Syracuse for a position that you tell me is no longer available. And and he was like, "Okay, that's one way to answer it."
The interview did not end.
It ended pretty shortly thereafter. Yeah.
I love the horror stories. See, everyone
Oh
who
yeah.
sees somebody like you who's very successful, they think that it's just kind of magically happened. And, for you and I, the detail is in those horror stories that,
Oh yeah.
color our lives and then make it so that we're able to be successful because we have that background in rejection and horror stories and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, and bad jobs too, like or bad experiences once you land a position or make a move and go somewhere. It's not all peaches and cream. There's some tough parts and things that you have to overcome, and challenges and obstacles and hurdles and people that you have to deal with. So it's a mixed bag, and it's not always easy, but you can find success in diamonds in the rough for sure.
In the last 10 years, I
Mhm.
I I can't think of a business that has changed more than PR. I'm
Mhm.
probably wrong. I mean, everything has changed in the last 10 years, television with streaming and so many, the internet and
Yeah.
where you place information now. I was smiling hearing you say you were bringing a binder to
Yeah.
interviews, which doesn't happen anymore.
Right.
So in your position now, can you kind of
Mhm.
contrast how PR started for you and the things that you would do to get the word about something and where
Yeah.
PR is now and how different it is?
Sure. So when I started, I had joined a big global agency and was an account coordinator, which basically, I mean, that was the bottom of the bottom. You might have had, a leg up on an intern, but not by much. And so, fundamentally, we were hired by business to business, software companies primarily in healthcare tech and things like that, to get press, get ink, basically get stories for their business. And typically that would revolve around a press release, a news announcement. Maybe they brought on a new executive that they wanted to hire, or they had a case study, any major event for a business that they wanted to get the word out and get in front of more buyers. That was the objective: get their name out, tell stories about the brand, talk about how they're selling or helping solve business problems for different companies, and the hope would be that somebody would be reading one of these industry publications or a business publication, see this story and think, aha, that could help our business. And the thing I talk about today with our team, and so I've stepped out of a purely communications and PR role and have focused more on brand marketing and demand generation and seeing other facets of the marketing arm of our business. But PR and communications is very similar to sales in a lot of ways. And the difference is really only what you're selling. You're selling a story or you're selling a product. And oftentimes they're very much the same. And we have a salesperson on our team now who had originally started as a PR rep, and she's one of the more successful salespeople on our team. And I don't think that that's a coincidence. But getting back to your question about the means of getting things out there, getting the news and the word out, Twitter was just starting up in 2011, or at least it was starting to become more popular, more widely accepted, and a lot of brands were shifting to social media marketing because that's where the eyeballs were. And it was a couple of years after I had started where content marketing was starting to become extremely popular, and it was starting to cannibalize a little bit of the traditional PR efforts because buyers were becoming more educated, and so they weren't old school buyers were still reading these same industry publications that they would read, and they were doing business the way they'd always done it, but fundamentally marketing and everything was shifting, and so buyers are becoming more educated. They're taking control of the sales process. They aren't reliant on press and industry news to dictate what they were going to do for their business. They were taking control of that. And so they were going and researching more, and they were starting to read reports and read content and consume all these content and become more educated. And then the sales processes were the sales cycles were shrinking because the buyers know exactly what they want. They know who to go to. And so from just a general PR perspective, we saw a big shift. And I saw it while I was in PR agencies, where the traditional means of doing business, pitching a reporter a story, getting press and sharing it with a client, that still is applicable and that still happens today. But we see a lot of agencies that are dipping their toes in content marketing, different mediums, social media, video, because those are services that brands recognize. And I today, being, leader on our marketing organization, and looking to vendors to say, we need more types of content. We need this, we need that. We still have a PR function, and our PR guy does a fantastic job getting stories and getting our news and message out there. But it certainly has shifted, even in the 10 years, and that's not a long period of time. But it definitely has shifted. And so, if I had a piece of advice for, PR majors or anybody trying to get into the industry and make a career in PR, or communications or anything, I would say, diversify what your skill set is and focus and do other things, become a great writer and understand different principles of marketing and be a Swiss Army knife. You can certainly go down a path and be really focused on your discipline, and you can still be a great PR person. You can still be, a great digital marketer. You could be a great social media marketer, but understanding other facets of the marketing as a discipline will serve you best, especially if you're trying to break into the job market.
The college that you teach at specializes in fashion, correct?
Well, they offer a number of different schools, but yeah, I teach in the School of Fashion.
So let's talk about something fun.
Yeah.
Do you talk to the students about getting Instagrammers to, how, that track of now, personalities on Instagrammers, 10 years ago, these people who are famous, who you and I have never heard of, are,
Right.
who are now saying, I'm wearing a blue jacket from, so-and-so, and then 1,000 people go out and buy it. Is that part of the curriculum now? Are you talking about how to get influencers to pretty much sell their wares to their following?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the students could educate me on TikTok and all these influencers.
Make a video, make it backwards, make a video, make it
Exactly.
backwards.
Some of that's lost on me. Okay. But, well, I do think that the school does focus and talk a little bit about social media and different digital marketing components, and so understanding and having awareness of how that works, is ever present, and it is discussed. It has to be, because that is the way that things are trending and moving. And so, for my focus, I teach one class, and I just started last semester, the spring, and was really fortunate. I've been working with a school and the dean for a number of years, and actually hired a lot of interns from the School of Fashion to intern with my company over the summer. And, we were a retail technology company, so there was a natural fit, and they were right, in our backyard. In Newton, our offices were in South Boston, or in Boston. And so it was really convenient, and it was easy. And we had hired a number of students from the school and had a really great experience. Our CEO had written a book in 2017, and I had sent it to the dean, and had hoped that, some of the professors would use that as part of their curriculum. And I did the same when I had started. And so it was kind of a slow build, and they had an opening and wondered if I wanted to teach this course on digital commerce and analytics, which is a blend of what's going on, the different means that consumers are buying, and how retail brands are adapting to technology and taking advantage of mobile technology, e-commerce, and this concept of omnichannel, and all of these different things that are happening to retail. And then the analytics side of it. What are the marketing teams, or what are the e-commerce teams looking at as far as what is the cost of acquisition for a new consumer, all of that different stuff. So that was my focus. And we covered a lot in the 15 weeks that, over the course of the semester. And it was a lot of fun. It was an experience for sure. I really enjoyed it.
I can't imagine what it must be like, 10 years after having been a student and now suddenly
Yeah.
you're a professor. And you said you did it in the spring. So is this in the middle of the pandemic? Are you actually doing classes on Zoom?
We were, yeah. So there were some classes that were hybrid, but it was one night a week, Wednesdays from like 6 to 8:30. And so, I don't live too far away from the school, but it was going to be difficult. I have like a young child at home, so it was. And the school was great, and they said if it's easier to work from remotely and do the Zoom classes, that's totally fine. There were some courses that were hybrid, and some professors were doing that, but it was all over Zoom, which presented its own challenges, I'm sure. And working in that way, I was comfortable with it. I'd had to do that for about a year before the class had started, so there weren't things that I was unaware of as far as challenges go. But teaching for the first time, a group of students on Zoom, there were some challenges and some headaches, and we got through it. But
so I have a professor in my Zoom I have a Zoom group of Oswego grads, and one of them is a professor, and he talked about when the students have their camera off, and then you end the class, but you don't you as the professor leave. You as the professor stay on, and you say to the class, okay, class is over. And then you see like 3 people and they don't leave. And they're either watching TV, they've left the room. And that's a little disheartening, he said.
It was really hard because, like I had said, I, as a student became more engaged in the curriculum and the classes, and really communicating and working with the professors, my junior and senior year, and sort of, it was a click, and it became a lot easier. And I got a lot more out of that, as part of like my experience, as a student, and was hoping that, I would have some of the same, in working with the students. And there were a few that ended up, coming to office hours and talking through and asking about, asking questions and different things like that. But there were a few instances where I'm presenting slides or something, and students they're eating pizza or talking with their roommates, or the camera's off, and it's a shot, and I'm like, man, did I do this crap when I was a student? And then you think like, okay, I might have dozed off a couple of times in a lecture hall or something, but
only in the 300 rooms, in the 300 rooms in Lanigan. Then you could get away with it. But, in those smaller classrooms, it would be really, I took classes with 15 people in them. You couldn't fall asleep in those.
No.
Before I took a look, I promised only an hour of your time. So I just want to get to what your own company does. I did a little research online. So you actually work with businesses and teach them how to use the internet to make it easier for customers to buy their products. Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah. Yes, that's pretty close. So we're a software company, and the founder of New Store, that's the company that I work for, was an e-commerce pioneer. So he had founded his first company, Intershop, in the early 90s, and was credited with creating the first online shopping cart. And so he was a really early e-commerce pioneer. He took that company, Intershop, public in Germany and in the US, and then later founded Demandware, which is an e-commerce company based out of Burlington, Massachusetts. And the difference there is it was e-commerce still, but it was cloud-based. And so it wasn't, built in, servers and on-premise type technology. It was all in the cloud, like how we have our iPhones that, update because stuff lives in the cloud. And so this was how the software was built. And it was pretty innovative at the time. And he was obviously onto something, because in 2015, he had sold that company to Salesforce for just under $3 billion, and then founded New Store. Yeah. And so
come on, $3 billion. I'm getting an island and I am drinking pina coladas. I'm not finding any more businesses. I'm enjoying life. He must be very passionate about what he does.
He is, and a visionary for sure, because at the time he was thinking, okay, and this is around 2015, and so there's always these stories about e-commerce is cannibalizing retail stores and brick and mortar retail, and the fact of the matter is about 80 to 90% of all retail sales are still happening in stores. So actually the problem wasn't that e-commerce was too prevalent and there are too many stores, and that is the case sometimes, but it was actually that the store experience was suffering because brands weren't embracing technology and providing the same type of e-commerce like store experience or shopping experience in the stores. And so, between the mobile device, which we talk about as like a connective tissue between consumers and brands. And we talked about TikTok and influencers. I mean, everybody's on their phone all the time. And so, the value proposition, and one of the things that Stefan wanted to do, our CEO, put the power of the entire like website and all these different options and tools into the hands of a store associate. And so what we've done is basically for our customers, they don't have cash registers, they don't have cash wraps. All of the checkout up, everything is done through an iPhone. So we're an omni-channel store solution, and we provide a point of sale and an order management system. Everything's built to do all these different shopping workflows like click and collect or curbside pickup, remote selling, clienteling, to have really modern retail shopping experiences. So we work with some really fun brands like Burton Snowboards, Untuck It. You might have seen the commercials, the shirts you don't tuck in. To name a few.
Tan.
So
Tan is a fan of that. Tan from Queer Eye for the Straight Guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, they're great people over at Untuck. And so it's a lot of fun. We have quite a few customers. We signed a big customer yesterday, and so the company is about 5 years old, or 6 years, I guess, now. And we're starting to really start to grow, and we're about to hit that growth stage. And so it's an exciting time to be working at this company.
So Oswego kids that just graduated in May, they want to know, are you looking for people?
Always.
Oh my God. Okay. So we'll put your email address in the as the producers do the magic of the vlog. They'll put your email address down here. What kind of people are you looking for? Do they have to live in Boston? That's the new question.
No, not always. So we're always looking for engineers and product focused people. There's also customer support and professional services where doing implementations. I mean, anybody with some technical expertise and developers, product or software engineers, we're always hiring in that field. And but we have a pretty big and growing people and HR team. Our finance team and marketing, of course, we'll always talk with students or applicants and interview. So anybody, feel free to reach out, and we'll see if there's a fit.
So my last question is an opportunity for you to give a shout out to anyone who you feel has been responsible for all your success. I always want to give people a chance to say, hey, if it wasn't for these couple of folks, I wouldn't be where I am. Because your mom and dad are going to be watching this, and all your friends. Sure. You're going to put it on Facebook, and they're like, did Marcus mention me? So now the pressure's on. Now you have 10 minutes to do your Oscar speech.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, my parents have been extremely supportive and core to, just helping me, become me, I suppose. And, I have a great friend network as well. And, students and peers from Oswego. I guess I'll credit Nick for actually helping me get my first professional job, because if it wasn't for that referral, from one Oswego alum to another, I who knows? So that was pretty important. I don't know. I haven't really thought about that really. I mean, obviously all of my professors and everything, different jobs and mentors and stuff like that have been really pivotal. My boss today is a really fantastic person, and have learned a lot from him, just as my manager, and then just as a mentor. His name Phil Granoff. So that would be one as well. So
Nick and Phil, we're going to tag you. So,
Yeah.
you get the credit. Marcus, it has been a joy to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking the time. We appreciate it. And this has been Dee and Marcus and the Oswego Alumni Vlog. We will see you next month. Thanks again.
Thank you, Dee.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Oswego Alumni Podcast. As always, the Oswego Alumni Podcast is presented by 88.9 WNYO, the Laker Radio Network, and the Oswego Alumni Association.